Lalita
Shri Vishakhanvitamsha
Shri Vishakhanvitamcha
He Krishna Karuna Sindhu
He Krishna Karuna Sindhu
Dinabandhu Jagatpate
Dinabandhu Jagatpate
Gopesha Gopika Kanta
Gopesa Gopika Kanta
Kanta Namostute
Radha Kanta Namostute
Sapta Kanchana Gaurangi
Sapta Kanchana Gaurangi
Radhe Vrindavaneshwari
Radhe Vrindavaneshwari
Subhanusute Devi
Vrishabhanusute Devi
Pranamami Hari Priye
Pranamami Haripriye
Panchakalpatarubhyascha
Panchakalpatarubhyasya
Kripasindhubhya eva cha
Kripasindhubhya
Patitanam pavanebhyo
Patitanam Pavanebhyo
Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha
Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha
Hare Shri Krishna Chaitanya
O Sri Krishna Chaitanya
Prabhu Nityananda
Prabhu Nityananda
Shri Advaita Gadadhara
Sri Advaita Gadadhara
Srivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna
Krishna Krishna Hare Hare
Krishna Krishna Hare Hare
Hare Rama Hare Rama
Hare Rama Hare Rama
Rama Rama Hare Hare
Rama Rama Hare Hare
Hare Krishna.
Thank
So
you.
welcome to everyone once again for today's Bhagavad Gita session. We'll be discussing on chapter 3 as we discussed. But before we begin with that, does anyone remember what are the points discussed in the previous class last Saturday? Anything you remember from last class?
Revolution inside will change ourselves.
Revolution inside will change us. How will that revolution come?
Facing the
By
demigod.
taking Krishna Prasad.
By taking Krishna Prasad. Okay, that's nice. Yes.
Then dealing with people around will change and will bring the transformation through Krishna consciousness.
What with people around? I did not get that.
Pardon?
Can you please repeat? What was the point you were making?
Change ourselves by taking Krishna Prasad, then dealing with people around will change and will bring the transformation through Krishna consciousness.
Okay, yeah. Taking Krishna Prasad will bring about a transformation within, and that will help us also further see things in a different manner outside. Very nice.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other points?
It was mentioned that demigods are pleased by sacrifices and performing yajñas, and this will bring the prosperity, and accepting the prasad from this yajñas and makes life purified.
Okay, yes, the demigods are pleased by performing yajnas, and it helps purify our life. Very nice.
All demigods are even more pleased when you do yajna to offer Lord Krishna.
Demigods are even more pleased when we are performing yajna for pleasing Lord Krishna. Very nice. Okay. Other points?
Vaibhav, you're trying to say something?
No, I think he just joined in.
We must have consistency in whatever activities we do.
Yes, nice. We must have consistency in whatever activities we do. Okay. So, of course, that goes to applies to our practices in Krishna consciousness. So, whatever practices we have, we should perform it consistently. Very nice. Any other points?
Chanting the name of Lord Krishna is more than anything else.
Chanting is the essence of everything. It's more than anything else. Yeah, that's nice. Okay. And that is the sacrifice. That is a yajna, right? For this age,
Yes.
which is chanting the holy names of the Lord. Yajñer Sankirtana Prayer Yajanti hi Sumedasha. In the Srimad Bhagavatam it is said that the Sankirtan Yajna or the chanting of the holy names of the Lord is what is recommended for this. And an intelligent person will actually take it up, and worship that Lord who has come associate, along with his associates, and who is always chanting the holy names of the Lord. Yes, thank you. Any other points?
Offering food consistently every day to God is like doing one of the biggest yajñas.
Yeah, offering food to the Lord, bhoga, is yajna. Like we had discussed, offering some oblations in the fire. It's actually fire is compared to the tongue of Lord Vishnu. Similarly, so when we are offering food to the Lord, that is also a yajna, sacrifice being performed. Very nice. What happens when we don't offer food and just take it?
Then sin.
Yeah, then we are eating sin. If it's not offered, then we are eating sin.
Without offering them to the demigods, in return is certainly a thief.
Yeah, if someone is taking things from nature, from the demigods, who are actually supplying all of this, so unless we pay them back through the means of sacrifice, we are actually thieves because we're making use of it without paying back in return. So sacrifice is meant for that. Okay, very nice. Any other points? Okay. Yes. Okay, great. That's what I mean. That was a lot of points. So it's very nice to see you all recollect so many points that were discussed in the last class. So we'll start with today's verse, and this is verse number 14 from chapter 3. So we'll recite this verse and then we'll discuss it. Okay. So this is chapter 3, verse number 14. Anad bhavanti bhutani
नादभवन्ति भूतानि
parajanyat anna sambhavah
परजन अनुसम्भवः
yad bhavati parajanyo
यज्ञभवन्ति
Yajnavati
पर्जन्यो
Panjanya
yajna karma samudbhavah.
यज्ञकर्म समुद्भव.
Would someone like to recite the verse? Sanskrit?
Can I read, Prabhuji?
Yeah, Prabhuji, if you can recite the verse, Shloka, Sanskrit Shloka. Can you try reciting?
अनंत भवन्ति भूतानि
Anad bhutani
Nani.
अनंत भवन्ति भूतानि परजन्य
Bhutani, Parjanya.
parajanyaranna sambhavah.
पर्जन्य
Sambhavah.
ज्ञानतो भवति पर्जन्यो
Yajna.
यज्ञकर्म समुद्भव.
Parjanyo yajñah karma samudbhava.
Yajna Karma Sambhava.
Sambhavah. Okay, can someone read? Yes, Prabhuji,
Yeah,
Krishna.
I am reading, Prabhuji.
Yes.
All living bodies subsist on food grains, which are produced from rains. Rains are produced by performance of yajna, sacrifice, and yajna is born of prescribed duties.
Yes. So, like Lord Krishna says in this verse, so it's a continuation of what we were discussing so far. Now we know that all of us living entities, are our sustenance is based. We subsist on food grains. And how do the food grains come about? They come by rains, and rains are produced by performance of sacrifice. And sacrifice is born of prescribed duties. So we all know that all living entities, there is practically no subsist. We cannot survive without there being grains. And grains, the production of field is completely dependent on rains, and rains come from yajña. So there is a whole cycle here. Okay, so this cycle is that one performs yajña, he gets rains, and because there are rains, he gets grains. And when one gets grains, we actually get energy. So how are we supposed to utilize that energy when we are actually getting, which we are getting from food grains? There are two things one can do. One is that one may use that energy that he is getting from the food grains in trying to satisfy his own senses, and he becomes a sense gratifier. Or he could actually use that energy in serving the Supreme Lord, or rather performing yajñas, which will actually then again help get rains, and again there will be grains. So it becomes a whole cycle. So if one is not doing that and is just trying to enjoy his senses, then surely he is, like we have discussed before, one becomes a thief, because he's making use of everything that is there in the material creation, but is using it only for his own sense gratification. And it's described that such a person who does not perform sacrifice is actually uselessly wasting his time, his life completely. Now, can you think of why it is so that it's said that someone who is not performing sacrifice is uselessly wasting his life? It's a strong statement, right? If someone is not performing sacrifice, he's uselessly wasting his life. Why is it said so? Any thoughts? Anyone?
Sacrifice as in yajna. We have to go through the death.
Yeah, yes. Yes?
Yeah, because what we get from Lord in form of rain, water, light, sun, we have to praise them back through yajñas, or thank them, or otherwise we will be thieves.
Okay.
We
So we
have to go through the cycle again and again. No?
have to go through the cycle again and again. Which cycle?
Death and birth.
Birth and death. Why do we have to go through the cycle of birth and death? I may not perform sacrifice, right? In modern day, a man thinks that everything is there at the tip of my fingers. I have a remote control, I can switch on the AC, I have a car, I can drive myself anywhere. I have all modern gadgets, I can communicate with people. If I want to go to another country, I can fly. I can do whatever I like because everything is under my control. Modern material advancement has brought things so much under our control that a modern man doesn't feel the need for performing any sacrifice to gain something, because he thinks that he actually has gained everything, and whatever he needs to gain, he can do so by his technological advancement. So why should one perform sacrifice, and why is it said that it's a waste of life if one doesn't do it?
Guruji, we have to contribute something towards so that we get rain and agricultural production is there, so that the whole mankind and all the living creatures can survive.
Yeah, very nice. That is
Yeah.
true. Like it said in this verse, without that we will not even get rain, and there will be no grains and nothing. We'll talk about a little more about that as well. So coming to the point of why it is a waste of life is because a human form of life is meant for something. What is the purpose? What is the goal of human form of life? Have we all thought ever before? Do we all have a goal? What is that goal?
Self-realization.
Self-realization. Okay.
We have to live and let live.
We have to live and let live. Okay.
We have to go back to Gokul, Goloka.
We have to go back to Goloka. Okay. Any other points?
Self-realization.
Self-realization. Okay. Any other points?
Serve the Lord.
Sorry?
Serve the Lord.
Serve the Lord. Yes. So yes, most all of the points are valid. And
It is
yes.
also renunciation, right?
Sorry?
Renunciation, renounce.
Goal of life is to become renounced.
In an attempt, Krishna conscious is renounce.
To get into Krishna consciousness is to be renounced. Okay.
Renounce as in moving away from the material world. Renounce.
Moving material from the material world, being renounced. Okay. Okay. So we know that this human form of life is very rare. That is what the scriptures say. And it said that Athato Brahma Jigyasa, the Vedanta Sutra, the very first aphorism says that now that you have attained this human form of life, inquire about the absolute truth. So this human form of life is not meant for sense enjoyment, because that sense enjoyment, which generally we all hanker for, is available in all species of life. It's there even in animal life. So it's not anything great that we are doing if we were just satisfying our senses. And just like this verse says that we get food grains, and like we were discussing earlier, so when we get food grains, we get energy. And if we use all of that energy in just trying to satisfy our senses, then it's a waste of life. The reason being, the whole arrangement in this world is such made that, like all of you all said, we need to get out of the cycle of birth and death. Right? We need to be engaged in the loving service of the Lord and go back to the spiritual world from where we originally have come, where there is no repeated birth and death. There is eternal life full of happiness. And that is what we are all looking for, eternal life full of happiness. But when we use things, our energy in our own sense gratification, we are actually disturbing the cycle that is created. The cycle that is created, the Lord knows that living entity has come and appeared for enjoying his senses. So all right, okay, there is enjoyment of senses or sense gratification needed to a certain extent, right? We all have this body. We cannot say that tomorrow I'll give up eating completely. It's not possible. We need to eat, right? Similarly, there is some sense gratification or some sense fulfillment that is needed because we have this body. So all right, if that is needed, then you do it through sacrifice or yajña. You perform yajña, and then by that, not only will you be able to actually satisfy your senses, at the same time you will also purify yourself by the performance of yajña. And when you purify yourself, then you are actually getting closer to the Supreme Lord, engaging in his devotional service and getting free from the cycle of birth and death. So that is a complete arrangement made in this world. Okay, there is a cycle. You be a part of that cycle. You perform sacrifice. You are not being ungrateful. You're expressing your gratitude for what you have received. You are getting fulfillment of your senses. At the same time, you are actually purifying your senses. You're purifying your whole consciousness. And you are actually indirectly or directly engaging in Krishna consciousness. So one comes to that stage gradually when one performs yajñas. But like I was saying some time ago, in the modern day, a person feels no need for any demigod, no need for any sacrifice. Why? Because he thinks that everything is under my control. So in the olden days, if you see in the Vedic times, man needed some enjoyment, material enjoyment, and for that material enjoyment, he would perform sacrifice. Different kinds of sacrifices, maybe for wealth, maybe for well-being, maybe for good production, whatever, something like that. Some sacrifice, some religious ritual was performed. You would see probably in your own homes also. You can maybe look at how our forefathers, did some of the yajñas, the sacrifices for the prosperity of the family or the well-being, right? So it was done for gaining something materially also. However, now in modern day, it's nowhere the need for it is felt. If someone feels that I don't need anything, I don't need to perform sacrifice, I'm not dependent on anyone because I'm getting whatever I want through my own strength, through my own arrangements, through my own advancement of technology. And I can go on exploiting this material nature in so many different ways, and I'll be happy. But the problem is, like this verse says, when one stops performing sacrifice, there will actually be no rain. And when there is no rain, then there'll be no grains. so much is dependent on rains. It's not just our food and grains that we get because of rains, but even other living entities like animals get, they are food. They get grass because of rains. Because of the rains, during a certain constellation, when the rain falls on riverbeds or seas, there are pearls that are produced because of the rains falling on the sea during a certain constellation. So you get jewels, you get pearls, because of rains. You get minerals. You're getting so practically all life forms are dependent on the rains. So there is a whole story that comes in the Srimad Bhagavatam where there was a king called King Vena, and he was a most sinful king. So he practically stopped all sacrifices, everything. He was a very sinful person. And the brahmanas who were there, so in the olden days there was monarchy, and the king was ruling and performing his administration usually under the direction of the brahmanas. So there is the intellectual class, there is the kshatriyas who are the administrators, then there is the working class, farmers and merchants, and then below that were the laborers. So the king never ruled independently. He always took directions from the intellectual class, that is the brahmanas. Sorry. So this King Vena, he was very sinful, and because he was so sinful, the brahmanas, they realized that there is complete chaos in society all over the world. And because he went on, they tried to give him good advice. They told him that you are supposed to encourage the Brahminical culture, and you were supposed to do perform sacrifice and so many other things he was supposed to do. So they tried to give him good advice, but because he was so sinful, he rather started counteracting the Brahmana and said, you all are supposed to take me as the Supreme Lord, because the king is a representative of God. So he was not receiving any instruction from the Brahmanas. So the Brahmanas decided that it's better to kill him. They actually chanted mantras, and by chanting of the mantras, he was killed. But then what happened was, because there was no king now after the death of King Vena, all the rogues, the thieves, they all flourished, because there was no one ruling, because there was no ruler, there was no check on all the thieves and rogues. They were just going on looting people in general. So there was no one to check them because there was no king. So the Brahmanas saw that it was a very difficult situation. Then King Prithu, he appeared, and he is an incarnation of the Supreme Lord. So when King Prithu appeared, he saw that actually earth was not producing anything. The earth had stopped producing grains. It stopped supplying any of the herbs, the minerals, the medicines, whatever was there. Nothing was being supplied by earth. And King Prithu, who was an incarnation of the Lord, he thought that why is the earth not producing anything? And he got very, very angry on earth. And he was ready to actually kill earth. So that is when Mother Earth starts speaking. And she speaks of so many things. She says that although I was supplying everything, but all the things that I was supplying, the grains, the herbs and everything, they were all being used by non-devotees, and they were used for their own sense enjoyment. And that is why I have now stopped producing anything. So we'll read some of the verses from that section. This is from the Srimad Bhagavatam. I hope you all can see the screen.
Yes, we can.
So this is Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4 and 18th chapter. Now this is Mother Earth speaking to King Prithu, who is an incarnation of the Lord. So she says, to benefit all human society, not only in this life but in the next, great seers and sages have prescribed various methods conducive to the prosperity of people in general. Okay. We'll come back to this verse, but we'll read verse number 6 now. She says, my dear king, the seeds, roots, herbs and grains which were created by Lord Brahma in the past are now being used by non-devotees who are all devoid of spiritual understanding. Okay. My dear king, not only are the grains and herbs being used by non-devotees, but as far as I am concerned, I am not being properly maintained. Indeed, I am being neglected by kings who are not punishing these rascals, who have turned into thieves by using grains for sense gratification. Consequently, I have hidden all the seeds which were meant for the performance of sacrifice. So for performance of sacrifice, seeds were needed, but Mother Earth is here saying that I actually hid all of them because all of them was being used for sense gratification. So in this world, we see sometimes there is scarcity, there is no rain. Sometimes it's predicted in the future in Kali Yuga, there will be practically no grains, to eat for surviving. There will be nothing. The earth will stop producing, like it's described here. Earth will stop producing grains. Why? Because the whole civilization will become so sinful, and everyone will be just, trying to enjoy their senses and try to exploit each other. So time will come when there will be no grains practically, and for man to survive, he will kill other men to eat their flesh, and that will be the only way how he will survive. This is predicted how it's going to be in the future in Kali Yuga with the degradation of civilization. And today also we see that there are so many things that are withheld in nature, and why they are so is because of sinful life, or the man's propensity to want to enjoy his own senses without taking part in this whole circle of performing sacrifices. So like we said, the human form of life is meant for a higher purpose, and that purpose is to get out of the cycle of birth and death and to purify one's existence. Because if one has to perform sense gratification, then that kind of life is available even for the animals. Even the animals do the same thing: eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Right? Then how is a human being different? So human being, the very purpose of human existence is that one purifies himself and one understands who he is and establishes relationship with the Supreme Lord. And that happens when one is actually performing sacrifice. He purifies himself and he becomes a part of the whole cycle. Right? Without which there will be no rains, and then there will be complete devastation. Right? So that is what we see in this verse. The rains come because of performance of yajña. Because of the rains there is grains, and then because of grains we are actually able to survive ourselves like that. So we'll read some of the other verses now in continuation to this, which will talk more of how one should live a life based on the Vedic scriptural understanding, and we'll come back to some of these verses that are there which are related to the verses now we're going to read in Bhagavad Gita. Guruji, you'd like to add anything? Is there any questions or comments also?
I have some. I just went into a different line of thought, but yeah, I think you've covered everything, so it's okay. We can go ahead.
Okay. Any comments or questions then, if on what we discussed so far?
One thing I recollect from what you said, like we have to offer to demigods also. Like whenever every day we show Naivedya, my mom shows it to a sun and Tulsi also. So that I never understood why it is done, but today I understand, like it's like offering to demigods.
Yeah, you see, in the olden culture, this was all there as a part of our life, because we realize that we are getting things from the demigods. And of course, like we'll read now some of the purport to this verse, because this purport has practically like very, 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 very important points, specifically with respect to Krishna Prasad. So we'll read some of these lines which are just so important, and we'll understand more about how the demigods, like it says, so we'll read from here. When Lord Krishna is worshipped, the demigods, who are different limbs of the Lord, are also automatically worshipped. Therefore, is the page getting highlighted as I'm highlighting? Are you able to see the highlight?
Yes.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yes.
Therefore, there is no separate need to worship the demigods. For this reason, the devotees of the Lord who are in Krishna consciousness offer food to Krishna and then eat, a process which nourishes the body spiritually. By such action, not only are past sinful reactions in the body vanquished, but the body becomes immunized to contamination of material nature. Okay, so a very vital point, and that is that not just our past sinful reactions, like we discussed in the last class as well, washed away, but it actually immunizes us. And then Prabhupada talks about an epidemic and how an antiseptic vaccine is needed, and we so much can relate to it now. that we need a vaccine today, to fight COVID. So just like a vaccine may protect us from the disease, similarly, it's a comparison made to tell us how eating Krishna Prasad is actually like a vaccination we take so that we don't get affected by material qualities. We don't get affected by the materialistic propensities. We don't get affected by the influence of the three modes of material nature. Right. So let's read further. Similarly, yes.
You can unshare and share. I think these lines will go with.
Okay. I'll just share again. So then it says, so similarly, food offered to Lord Vishnu and then taken by us makes us sufficiently resistant to material affection. And one who is accustomed to this practice is called a devotee of the Lord. Okay, very important, the words being used here. Food offered to Lord Vishnu then taken by us makes us sufficiently resistant to material affection, which means we'll not be affected or influenced by the materialistic propensities that we may have if we take Krishna Prasad. It's acting like a vaccination. Therefore, a person in Krishna consciousness who eats only food offered to Krishna can counteract all reactions of past material infections, which are impediments to the progress of self-realization. On the other hand, who does not do so continues to increase the volumes of sinful action, and this prepares the next body to resemble hogs and dogs, to suffer the resultant reactions of all sins. So the material world is full of contamination, and one who is immunized by accepting prasad of the Lord, food offered to Vishnu, is safe from the attack, whereas one who does not do so becomes subjected to contamination. Right. So this whole para, from where we started reading, it's just talking about how important is accepting Krishna Prasad and taking Krishna Prasad. So we have discussed this in the past few classes also, how we can try and whatever we cook at home, we first offer it to the Lord, and once we offer it to the Lord, then we take it as Prasad. That in itself is giving us so many benefits. It's freeing us from past sinful reaction. Like last time we had seen, it purifies our consciousness. It helps us develop finer tissues. We can actually then contemplate and think about spiritual subject matters, which is very difficult otherwise. Once we develop finer tissues in our brain, it actually helps us to contemplate on spiritual subject matters. And here it also says it acts like a vaccination. So when we go out, when we come on a Saturday and we hear every Saturday, something from the Bhagavad Gita, I'm sure it's certainly in some form or the other, it inspires us to, do some things positively, take to this process of Krishna consciousness, be it chanting, be it offering something at home to the Lord, be it, wanting to associate and understand the whole process a little more. But then when we go back to our usual day-to-day life, whether it's our work, a job, when we are meeting other people in the society who are not devotees, who are probably materialists, then that infection, the effect of that consciousness comes on us. And to protect ourselves, we need a vaccination. So the vaccination actually is Krishna Prasad. If we take Krishna Prasad, it will actually help us to become immune from the consciousness that other people may, put on us, their consciousness when we associate with them. Right? So it will actually help us. So both of these things, in Prabhupada said, even chanting the whole morning program, which begins with chanting of the holy names of Lord Krishna, is like taking a vaccination. So when you go out, then you will not be so much affected by the material atmosphere outside. Because today in the world, like we said, everyone is just wanting to gratify his own senses, and he doesn't feel the need for anything, to perform any sacrifice or to perform any religious or spiritual activity. He doesn't feel the need for it. And he thinks that he will be very happy and he will take all his wealth, his position, his everything with him. Practically everything will remain here. Nothing. Like Alexander the king, when he died, he said that keep my hands out, so that everyone will see that although I captured all the regions of earth, with me I'm taking nothing. So, and that is the fact that whatever we may accumulate in this world is actually going to remain here only. It's just that falsely for some time we claim possession of it. The only thing that goes with the living entity or the spirit soul is his consciousness, is his spiritual progress. So even if, let's say, we would have completed 40% of making advancement in Krishna consciousness in this life, the next life we'll begin with 40%. We'll start with 41% and we'll go to 100% gradually. But if we were to speak of our material education, if we are to speak of our wealth, if we are to speak of our relations, nothing is going to go with us. Next life we'll have to again start with Baba, black sheep, have you any wool? Starting from A, B, C, D all over again. We cannot say in the last life I was a doctor, I was an engineer, I was this, that. Nothing is going to, we will have to start it all over again. So all material endeavor becomes a zero, whereas spiritual endeavor becomes an eternal credit of the living entity. So a materialist doesn't understand that, and therefore he lives a life, making so many plans. And when we associate with him, we actually might also become, develop that kind of a consciousness. Instead of thinking about what I can do in this life, which will make my future, an eternal blissful life. It's like we plan for our future after our education. Okay, this is what I'm going to do. This is the job. This is what I'm going to do. But what about after death? We don't plan for that. But everything that we do in this life is actually preparing our next life. Okay, so we'll discuss more on this. Any questions or comments on what we just discussed so far? If not, we'll go to the next verse.
Can I quickly ask?
Yes,
you
please.
mentioned prasad as something like vaccination.
Yeah.
Can I presume safely in that anybody who is taking prasad will be immunized? Or does it have to be with faith only? So those who are with faith and taking prasad have greater chance of immunization from the vaccination, from the prasad, than those who are not. They are just eating it as food rather than prasad.
Yes.
Any comment on that?
Yeah. Certainly, faith is an important factor in all our practices. So when we are chanting with faith, when we are associating with faith, we are worshipping with faith. Faith is an important part. At the same time, we know that it's a medicine. Having Krishna Prasad is a medicine. So knowingly or unknowingly, if someone takes it, it will still benefit him. Knowingly or unknowingly, if someone chants the holy name of the Lord, even jokingly, even making fun, oh, these Hare Krishna people, they have come again. Oh, they're always on the streets. Oh, they're always chanting Hare Krishna. Even if jokingly someone just chants once the name of the Lord, it's actually going to benefit him. Because the holy name is non-different from the Lord. Similarly, Krishna Prasad is non-different from the Lord. So because everything in the spiritual domain is absolute. There is no difference between the Lord and his name and his Prasad. Because there is no difference when one takes it even knowingly, unknowingly, or without that much faith, it's surely going to benefit that person. There is no doubt about it. In once chanting the holy name is going to benefit that person. There's no doubt about it. Right? But then as we come to the process of Krishna consciousness, then faith becomes also an important aspect, an important principle of all our activities. We put faith in everything actually in this world. When we do our education, we do it with the faith that I'll get something, I'll be able to sustain myself later. When we are driving in a cab, we have faith that this person is having a license. So faith is needed everywhere, in whatever field we may be in. No one can say that I can work without faith. We put faith, but it's put somewhere else. So when one puts that faith in the words of the scriptures, when we put faith in what Krishna is telling us through the Bhagavad Gita, because that's his instruction, then that certainly will help us, progress further and further ahead in Krishna consciousness. So even without faith, it will help. With faith, I'm sure that will probably help a lot more. Vijayanath, if you'd like to add to this.
Yeah. So I think even to the previous verse, I was kind of pondering on the point that what happens when you eat without offering to the Lord. So it's actually an exchange of consciousness. So somebody who's actually cooking with a consciousness that oh, this is for me or my family, and maybe that person just had a fight, right? So there's just so much anger, and he's thinking, oh, that rascal, I'll show him that, and that's how he's cooking or she is cooking. So that consciousness gets into the food, and the person who eats that food naturally will also be aggressive, right? That's why they say you are what you eat. So similarly, prasadam, like Prabhuji was describing, even knowingly, unknowingly, if someone eats and the devotee has prepared that prasadam thinking that, oh, this is for Krishna, and he actually offers it to Krishna first, with that loving mood of devotion. So, just to, I'm going to take 2 more minutes, Parthiv, sorry, but just to elaborate. So, a lot of times in the early days of our Krishna consciousness movement, devotees would actually, and Prabhupada actually used this also. We had something called as ISKCON bullets, which is nothing but a jar filled with gulab jamuns Prabhupada used to keep. And he would say, okay, you want to eat as much you like. And everyone, going in, coming out, will just open the jar, pop up a gulab jamun in their mouth. And they got attracted to Krishna consciousness, right? Even to an extent that, one time they wanted permission for the Rath Yatra. Devotees simply took some prasad. They knew these people are not going to understand anything what we say, and they're going to deny the permission. Simply took some prasadam. They did not even inform them this is prasad. Just by honoring that, they were, the police authority like, okay, fine, go ahead. So there are different kinds of sukritis, right? I think I've discussed this earlier, but just for the benefit of everyone again, right? There is bhoga unmukha sukriti, that's the first kind. Then there is mukti unmukha sukriti, second, and third is bhakti unmukha sukriti. Sukriti is piety, right? So one kind of piety leading to more enjoyment, more bhoga. The second kind of piety leading to liberation, mukti unmukha sukriti. And the third kind of piety leading to devotion, bhakti unmukha sukriti. So, knowingly or unknowingly, if someone comes in contact with Krishna, his devotion starts. So, even if somebody doesn't know that, oh, this is prasadam, doesn't understand the, first of all, doesn't even know or understand the value of prasadam, but still he accepts or honors. Prasad is going to have this effect, like Prabhuji is describing. It's a medicine, it'll work, right? So, immediately his bhakti unmukha sukriti is, gets accumulated, and because of that the person then becomes willing to hear. There was this lady who was living next door to one of our temples in the west, and every single day she would be complaining. Devotees would do mangalarti at 4:30 or 5, and she would be complaining. Every now and then they would just start kirtan, and she would even call the cops sometimes. So she was a big trouble. But then over a period of time, right, just by dint of living next door, right, somehow the other, even unwillingly, hearing Hare Krishna, right, her heart transformed. She completely changed, right? And then she started coming, and then eventually she met Srila Prabhupada also when Srila Prabhupada was visiting. Right? So yeah, I mean, somehow the other, yena kena prakaram, you come in contact with Krishna, his devotees, his prasadam, his name, anything, the process will purify you. Yes, Puji.
Thank you so much, Ruji, for giving the practical understanding also of how Prabhupada actually also did that. Yes, Balmukund Prabhu, you have anything to...
Prabhu, just for the skeptics, how do we explain that during this pandemic, alongside so many other people, lots of Krishna devotees and Swamijis also passed away? So somehow they didn't get the immunization effect of prasadam and chanting.
So
It's just a skeptic's view. I don't agree with it, but just how to explain to people who...
So, okay, I'll just add a line, and then Prabhuji, you can continue. So, we are not advertising or saying that, oh, become Krishna conscious and you will never die. Right? We're not saying that. Or, there won't be any sufferings. In fact, we're saying that, yes, this is Dukhala Mashashvatam. This world is full of misery and it's temporary. Right? So, difficult situations will come. But with Krishna consciousness, you will have the ability or the mental wherewithal to overcome those difficulties. That's one. Second, the body is temporary. That's one of the main things that we're talking about. The body is temporary. So it's going to die one day or the other. It's going to be diseased, right? It's going to get old. In fact, we're the one informing that this is going to happen. So just act in time, right? So it's normal, right? So we're not claiming that nothing of this sort will happen. It will happen. But at the end of the day, what is this immunization about? This immunization is the immunization of consciousness, right? That even on the deathbed, if you are fully Krishna conscious, right, you won't be thinking of your dog, of your house, of some other family member, or of your bank balance, but you'll be thinking of Krishna and you'll go back home, back to Godhead. So you won't become a cockroach in your house because you're attached to your house. So the immunization is from, the karmic reaction and, ending up in a, hellish condition. That's and plus immunization of degrading in consciousness. That's what we're talking about. Roji, you want to add something?
Yeah. So Prabhupada used the word material affection there, immunizing ourselves from material affection. So as Prabhuji was explaining, it's the consciousness that is what we're talking about. So the protection is of consciousness. It nowhere says that if someone takes the Krishna consciousness, he'll not be diseased or he'll not die. Death is there for sure for everyone who has accepted this body, and that is also one of the verses, right? For one who is born is sure to die. But the protection here, like I was saying, if someone begins Krishna consciousness, even 40% in this life, that is going to remain as his eternal credit. It won't go away. So that is a protection of consciousness, not the external body. Even Socrates, we all know, is a great philosopher. He had the understanding that I am not the body, I am spirit soul. And they gave him poison because they wanted to kill him actually. But he said, you can only kill me if you capture me. If you actually can capture me, then you will be able to kill me. The point he was making was he knew that I am spirit soul, I am not this body. And you, being spirit soul, you cannot capture me. So he took the poison and surely it had an effect on the body and the body had to die. Right? But then he knew he was on that platform of realizing that I am not the body. Right? So the point being made here is that the body, everyone has to give up. As Prabhuji was explaining, the scripture gives, this example is given. So death comes for both the devotee as well as a non-devotee. For a non-devotee, it is like the cat catching hold of the rat. How does it catch hold of the rat? From behind. And when the rat is caught like that, it knows it's gone. It's the end now. It's being caught by the cat. But the same cat, when it catches hold of its kitten, it does in the same way. It just holds it by the neck. But the kitten is feeling safe. It feels like, oh, I'm protected. Right? I'm safely in the hands of my mother. So death for a devotee is just like that. It's just changing a body and continuing service in Krishna to the Supreme Lord. So death comes for both the devotee as well as the non-devotee. And the devotee just continues his service thereafter. But for a non-devotee, it is like hell. Death is like, it's hellish. And they don't even know what their future is. Depending on their karma, they might be degraded to lower species of life. So it's more the protection of consciousness, not the body.
So Prabhu, to conclude from my side, it will be like other examples, using material examples of river, sun rays. In the same way, we are using this vaccination analogy as a material way of explaining something that is spiritual. In other words, we are talking of spiritual immunization, not material immunization.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Exactly. Yes. That is what so if you read carefully the words that Prabhupada used there, I'll go back to the purport. So Prabhupada says very clearly, but it will actually protect us from material affection. Okay? Yeah. Read it again. So the material world is full of contaminations. One who accepts prasad is saved from the attack. Now what attack is this? This is the attack of material contamination, which means the consciousness of becoming a materialist. So from that attack one is saved. Again here, similarly, food offered to Lord Vishnu, then taken by us, makes us sufficiently resistant to material affection. So it's not saying that it's going to save us from death. It's material affection. Rather, the consciousness of who I am as a spirit soul. I'm part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, and I have, in one sense, in the material world, I am like in a prison house, and to think that yes, this prison house is my home is a false understanding. So it's protecting us from that understanding and consciousness.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Lord. Okay, so we go to the next verse. Karma brahmodbhavam vidhi
Karma brahmodabam vidhi.
brahmakshara samudbhavam tasmat sarvagatam brahma
Tasmat
nityam yagye pratishtitam. Would someone like to read the translation?
Can I read?
Yes, please, Mataji.
Regulated activities are prescribed in the Vedas, and the Vedas are directly manifested from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Consequently, the all-pervading Transcendence is eternally situated in acts of sacrifice.
Yeah. So in this verse, it's actually said that all our activities should be done as per the Vedic injunctions. Now, Prabhupada explains in the purport that the Vedas are actually coming from the Supreme Lord. When the Lord is breathing, the four Vedas actually come about. The Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sama Veda, Atharva Veda. It's coming from the breathing of the Lord. And the Lord can do that because the Lord is, like it's described in the Brahma Samhita, any sense can do the act of any other sense for the Supreme Lord. With his eyes, he impregnates the living entities in the material world, and that is how he fathers them, just with his eyes. Similarly, when we are offering food to the Lord, just by his glancing over the food, he is accepting the prasad, or just by hearing the prayers, he is accepting it. So the Lord, for him, any sense can do the activity of any other sense. Similarly, the breathing of the Lord is actually giving rise to these four Vedic scriptures. And from the Vedas, we get understanding of how we should lead our life. So when we lead our life as per the direction of the Vedic scriptures, then we are, paving ourselves and making ourselves, helping ourselves go back home, back to Godhead, to the spiritual world. But if we don't do that, if we don't follow the injunctions of the Vedic scriptures, then we are going to get further and further entangled. So this again is spoken about by Mother Earth in the Bhagavatam, the verses that we were looking at previously. She speaks exactly the similar points here. So she says, like you can see in verse 3 here, she says, to benefit all human society, not only in this life but in the next, the great seers and sages have prescribed various methods conducive to the prosperity of people in general. So the Vedic scriptures are there. There is a knowledge that is coming from the sages that is there. And if one wants to make his life successful, then it's better, it's good for him that he follows these injunctions. Now, if you look at the purport that Prabhupada gives to this verse in the Bhagavatam, again, a very, very, very important purport. Yeah. So we'll read a little bit from this purport. So he says, Vedic civilization takes advantage of perfect knowledge presented in the Vedas, presented by great sages and Brahmanas for the human society. Vedic injunctions are known as Shruti, and addition supplementary are called as Smriti. They follow the principles of Vedic instruction. Human society should take advantage of instructions from both Shruti and Smriti. If one wants to advance in spiritual life, he must take instructions and follow the principles. In Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu, Srila Rupa Goswami says that if one poses himself as advanced in spiritual life, but does not refer to the Shrutis and Smritis, he is simply a disturbance in society. See, nowadays it's become fashionable that a man or a so-called spiritualist or a spiritual leader, he will bring about his own philosophy and he will say so many nice things, and that may be very pleasing for the common masses to hear also. But what is Srila Rupa Goswami saying here? He's saying that Shruti Smriti Puranadi Panchrataki Vidim Vina Ekantikir Hari Bhakti Utpata Eva Kalpate. He says that actually, if any such knowledge is there which is not based on the Vedic scriptures, which is not based on the Shruti, the Smriti, the Puranas, if it's just coming out of mental concoction, just by mental speculation, Someone by his own realization of life, he pens and he writes down a book, and he becomes a motivational speaker, or he becomes a leader of a spiritual organization. But his whole idea and understanding comes from his own realization of this world, but it's not based on the Vedic scriptures. Then such a thing is actually going to cause disturbance in human society, because his understanding of this world is limited. And why is it limited? Is because a human being is having four defects. He is having imperfect senses. He has a propensity to cheat. He is subject to illusion. And what is the fourth one? So imperfect senses are there, because of which there's a tendency to make mistakes. That's the fourth one. So because a human being has four defects, whatever knowledge he may present, himself through his own mind and through his own speculation, will always be imperfect, and that will create a disturbance in society. So it's very, very important that we follow injunctions given by the acharyas, which is again there in the scriptures. It's not out of someone's own mental concoction, or he might say, I went to Himalayas, I got this understanding of the world, and I'm spreading this now. It becomes a whole speculation then, and such a thing then creates disturbance in society. And in the next verse, Prabhupada gives a very important line here. He says, the Vedic principles urge us to follow in the footsteps of great liberated souls. In this way, we benefit in both in this life and the next, and we can improve our material life. Okay, it's very important what it says here. We can also improve our material life. By following the principles laid down by great sages and saints, we can easily understand the aim of life. Okay, so again, very important. And the last one more verse, I'll just point out this one more line here, because it's just so important. At the present moment, it has become fashionable to disobey the unimpeachable directions given by the acharyas and the liberated souls of the past. Presently, people are so fallen that they cannot distinguish between liberated soul and a conditioned soul. Right? And then he talks about the four defects of conditioned soul. So in modern day, it's become a fashion to reject, what is given in the scriptures, because because the Britishers said the Vedic scriptures just like mythology. It has no good understanding and no good knowledge. Or to reject the acharyas or the sages, who have given knowledge based on these Vedic scriptures. So it's become fashionable to disregard that and to create our own ideas about life, to create our own understanding of what this world is. And then we can go on philosophizing and telling, oh, this is how things should be. This is what I think. I think this, I think that. I believe in this, I believe in that. The point is, we may go on philosophizing like that, and we may come with our own understanding of what this world is. At the end of it all, it's all only going to result into repeated failures. That is what this verse says. It is going to repeat and being unsuccessful again and again. A foolish person who manufactures his own ways through mental speculation does not recognize the authority of sages who laid down unimpeachable directions, is simply unsuccessful again and again in his attempts. So, if you look at the positive side of this, when we are born as human beings, all the hard work, everything is done. The Vedic scriptures are there. It gives us directions of how we need to lead life. Bhagavad Gita is like described to be like the manual of for us. When we buy a product, we get a manual along with it to understand how to use it. Similarly, when we get this human form of life, we are actually getting a manual of how we need to apply ourselves. What kind of life we should live, what should be our goal, what should be the direction in which we should be working. Everything is given. If only we applied ourselves to the whole direction that's given in the Vedic scriptures, we'll actually be happy. We'll live a more peaceful life. We'll be much happier, and our future will also be eternal, full of happiness. The problem is that the tendency is to manufacture our own ways of life, and that is what creates all the problems and the chaos in society. Like we were discussing the story of King Vena. So in olden days, when there was monarchy, the kings were actually so qualified, not just to administer, but they were called as Rajarshis. Rajarshis means they were not only Rajas, but they were Rishis also, which means they were great sages who were kings. So when they were in power, they could actually put the society in order and make it work in such a way that there was no scarcity. There was no scarcity of rain. You can see it during the time of Lord Ram. We keep talking about Rama Rajya. Right? Why do we want Ram Rajya? Because Ram Rajya was actually like that. It was flourishing. No person was unhappy. There was a man who lost his son. He came to Lord Ram and he said, "Why did I lose my son? How is it possible that a son dies before his father?" And he was holding Lord Ram accountable for it, because he said, "In your kingdom, this has happened." Can you imagine how accountable the king was? That he went to Lord Ram and he said that I have lost my son. How is it possible that a son dies before his father? So to that degree, a king was actually responsible and accountable. And it was his duty to ensure that everyone was practicing as per his dharma, whether he was a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya. He was doing his religious duties and in that way progressing further and further ahead in spiritual life. But when that was taken out, when that was thrown away, or when the kings or the monarchs became degraded themselves, or like we see in present day democracy, where the leaders themselves don't have a correct understanding of how one should lead life, then there is complete chaos. Because the leaders are voted now in democracy by the common man who, by his own understanding, thinks what is right, and he has no practical understanding from the Vedic scriptures of how one should lead life. So he votes someone who will satisfy his senses, and the leader, when he comes to his post, he's only worried about how I can be happy and how I can maintain my position in society, how I can maintain my post and my chair. He's only worried about that. So everyone is only thinking about his own sense gratification. That is when the chaos begins. So understanding and leading a life based on the Vedic scriptures and what direction it gives us is actually the way of being happy. So all the knowledge is there. All we need to do is just pick up the Bhagavad Gita and then read it and apply it in our lives. That will make our life successful. Coming back to the verse that was being spoken about here, and so Prabhupada talks about that, how the Supreme Lord, from him the four Vedas come. And if we lead that kind of a life based on the scriptural understanding, then we can perfect our lives also. Would you like to add anything here?
Yeah, a couple of things, but I was thinking, maybe we can do a breakout room as well after this. So I was thinking on the fact that how Krishna consciousness is actually very, very natural. And when we hear again and again, oh, one should follow scriptures or one should follow Vedas, I mean, there could be somewhere an argument in our head that, why do I need to follow? Why do I have to do something which is not coming natural to me? And that's the tendency where people want to, say that, oh, I will follow my own path, as I like, right? That's the mind essentially. But yeah, the mind wants to, not be bound by any rules and regulations. The fact that we need to understand is that actually Krishna consciousness is natural to us. It's our original position. The natural behavior of a devotee, in the spiritual world is actually what we have it as a book here in the form of Vaishnava etiquettes. So this is not trying to, push you against your inherent nature or something, but it's actually trying to rekindle or remind you of what your actual nature or original nature is, and thereby you can behave like that in a very, uh, you know, naturally behave like that. If you just get, little accustomed and practice. So that's the whole process of practicing Krishna consciousness, is to remind ourselves of our lost relationship with the Lord and how we behave in that relationship, right? Otherwise, it might sound dogmatic. Okay, you have to follow this, you have to follow Vedic injunctions, this and that. Yeah, I mean, there could be number of rules and regulations, but who likes rules and regulations, right? So we also need to understand that this is not just rules and regulations for sake of rules and regulations, but it is actually helping us, getting out of this disease condition, like we studied in the previous verse. So obviously, when you're diseased, you have certain do's and don'ts, so that you recover and come back to your original health. Somebody suffering from amnesia, the family members try to remind him, oh, this is how you used to do things, this is how it's done, and then they actually have him repeat those steps as he used to follow earlier, so that at some point in time the memory is back. Yes, I was doing this, right? Similarly, for us, it's just to bring our memory back that yes, I was with Krishna in the spiritual world, and this is what I'm supposed to do. And then that behavior, what is there in the scriptures and the Vedic instruction for us to follow, becomes like a natural behavior. It comes naturally to us. You don't need to separately fix our behavior, because in the spiritual world, everyone is purified. The natural behavior is Vaishnava etiquette, because that behavior is born out of consideration that, oh, how will Krishna be pleased? I don't know if I made sense.
Yes, yes, really, very much. Yeah, so it's very natural for, and actually it's a very joyful process. So why today, like I was saying, people still talk about Ram Raja, because it was a whole peaceful environment. Everyone was flourishing. In fact, it's said that even a person could even choose his time of death. That is how it was. So there was no scarcity. There was no unnecessary quarrel or envy or things like that. There's peace, there all over in society. So that is what we are all looking for in today's society as well, of some peace being there, a sense of happiness being there, a sense of contentment. But because it's misdirected and it is arising from, like we were discussing, mental speculation of people, it's unauthorized. It becomes unauthorized because it's coming from our own understanding of the world, and that is where the problem happens. So when we know, okay, there is a certain way, if we lead our lives in that way, and then that is going to help us become more happy, we can give it a try, right? And it's natural. It becomes very, very natural to lead a life like that then.
Hi, this is Preeti. I just have a question.
Yes.
Yeah, so I was able to resonate with what you were saying, that we all have different ways of worshipping God. Okay, so of course, when we talk about ISKCON, we are talking about Krishna, and it is our belief that Krishna is the supreme Lord or God. So I was just thinking, as a human being, and because this is my personal experience, I have been into different things throughout. And as a person, you're sometimes very confused because unless and until you experience something, it is somebody else's belief. Okay, so for example, so there are different institutions today in India, also or across the world, where people are practicing different things, but the goal is the same. So for example, I'm not comparing, but I'm just trying to tell you that this is the confusion which we go through, at least I have gone through. So for example, there is Brahma Kumari institution, then there is this Buddhism which is very popular, then of course ISKCON, and so many others. So uh, I don't know. I mean, are we saying that Krishna consciousness is the only way to, worship Lord, or to achieve that goal of self-realization, or there are other methods also, or this is the best method? So I do always have these questions in my head. If you can, clarify that.
Yeah,
Thank
that's
you.
a very good question. So coming, from the point of the question you were making, it's a belief that Krishna is the supreme person. So just at that point, so we are following the scriptures, like we're reading Bhagavad Gita every day, right?
Right.
Directly reading it from there. The Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Mata Parataram Nanyat, that there's no truth superior to me. And we see the same thing being spoken by Lord Brahma in the Brahma Samhita. He says, Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha. That there are so many controllers, but the supreme Ishvara is Krishna. That is what Lord Brahma says. In the Padma Puran, Lord Shiva says the same thing, that of all worship, the worship of Lord Vishnu is the best. So we are actually trying to follow the scriptures and what is given in the scriptures. And that is the point we were talking about right now, that how important it is to follow what is there in the scriptures and not come about with our own ideas of what life is all about. Someone might just say that I went to the Himalayas, I got some realization, this is how I perceive my life, and he writes a book, and so then it's his own understanding of life, and he may have he may be a leader of a society or a spiritual organization or whatever, something like that. Unless it's actually supplemented or supported by the Vedic scriptures, it becomes a cause of concern, it becomes a cause of disruption in the normal course of activities. That is why Srila Rupa Goswami said that unless it's supported by the Vedas, the Upanishads, or the Puranas. If you are just presenting an idea which it's not there anywhere here, then it becomes a cause of disturbance. So
So
it's
just
not that.
to, sorry, just to add here and probably, let you know where I'm coming from. So I was born into an Arya Samaji family and ardent fan of Vedas because Maharishi Dayanand was the guru supposedly. And, so they only talk about Vedas. And in that, they used to refer that there is no concept of, for example, idol worship. So they'll say, whatever you want to do, it is in the form of yajña. So, morning and evening, they will do yajña. And then they say, even in Vedas, there is no reference of, I mean, the God is, kind of referred as God. That's it. Formless God.
Yeah.
So that was one sect which I have seen since my childhood. Then the other sect is Sanatan Dharam, which my mother came from. So she was an ardent fan of Krishna since her childhood. So therefore, I also got, sometimes you start believing what your parents teach you. So therefore, we have a mandir, and I used to pray to Lord Krishna, and so on and so forth. And maybe that's the reason that I got interested in attending this Gita class also, because it's about Krishna, and I feel, oh, I can relate to Krishna because I've been doing that since my birth in some way, or the since my childhood in the other way. So what I'm trying to say here is, I'm not challenging what you are teaching us. I am liking it, and I am feeling connected, but I'm saying sometimes you do feel confused because maybe you have not personally experienced something and you go by what people say. And that is why I think there is so much of confusion, though the goal remains the same. Everybody is seeking, I think, at the end of the day, as human beings, only one thing, which is to really understand the universal truths and
Yeah.
what you are here for.
Yeah.
So
So the understanding comes and solidifies when one practices. Like we've said,
yeah,
the proof of the pudding is in the eating. Right?
yeah,
So unless you actually practice and
experience, yeah,
experience, that is the only way. Because no matter how much someone says to you,
yeah,
yes, it will help us when we can relate to what is being spoken, and that is how
yeah,
we gather interest, and we'll feel like, okay, yeah, this person is making sense. It's the scriptures are making sense.
true,
So then we can relate to it, and then unless and until we apply it in our life, we'll always have that. And the more we progress in Krishna consciousness, like Roji was saying, it becomes a natural state, a lifestyle which is very natural for the living entity. Right now, we are in a world where who we are is also defined by what people think. Who I am, who I want to be, is so much defined by what is there in the media, what is there, what our friends think of us. So it's like we're trying to be someone who they want us to be, and we are trying to mold our life in a way that they'll be happy looking at us in a certain way. It's not
and
really me.
the challenge is that every institution, so-called spiritual institution, which we have, when you go and listen to them, they are equally confident in saying that this is the evidence, and on the basis of this we are saying this.
So
So you wonder, are ye bhi theek bol rahe hain, are ye bhi theek lag raha hai, are wo bhi theek lag raha hai. But I guess at the end of the day, it's a choice which we have to make, maybe by experimenting everything and then coming to some conclusion.
can I comment on that?
Yes, Puji, say something.
So
Thank you. Otherwise, yeah,
yeah,
please go ahead.
so very interesting question, Preeti. And like you rightly pointed out, I mean, I was about to say the same thing. So everyone who's belonging to, or is associated with a particular, organization, for example, especially spiritual organization I'm talking about, they will definitely claim, or claim to be, oh, we are the best, we have the best philosophy, right? Otherwise, those people won't be there in those organizations. They would have switched by now, right? If they don't have that firm faith that yes, what these guys are saying is perfect, that's the reason they're sticking around. Okay,
Yeah.
that's number one. Now, when we are choosing, or we are trying to find out, oh, which organization or which spiritual master, right? This also applies to spiritual master, or which spiritual master, or where can I surrender myself? What is that highest place, the best place where I can actually surrender myself? Everyone is claiming to be, the best. So in that situation, Krishna has given us intelligence to utilize, and we need to think, right? That which is the best. How we can understand this very simply is also described in scriptures. Now, say for example, Arya Samaj or some others, they're basing themselves, or they're trying to base themselves on scriptures. Some others are purely mental concoctions, like Brahma Kumaris. They're like Brahmit Kumaris, we call them. I mean, no offense to anyone, but yeah, I mean, in a joking manner, we can kind of tell them. So, they don't have any basis of any scriptures as such. They would kind of come up with something of their own. Now, obviously, you may question, are they have their own books, etc. Fair enough. The idea here is that everyone claims to be best, but we need to understand, how are people trying to connect to God? Is it out of fear? Somebody might be, oh, if you don't do this, God will punish you like this. If you don't do this, God will punish you like this. That might be their connection, right? So one is in the platform of fear. The second is in the platform of trade, right? A lot of Christian missionaries do this. Oh, you become, baptized, and we give your family 3 lakh rupees, 5 lakh rupees, etc. And they typically go to very remote villages, and they try to convert like that. So that's basically on the basis of give and take, right? Then there is a third level where there is a sense of responsibility somewhere. Okay, I'm connecting to God because He's the one who's provided me everything. There is some acknowledgement, some appreciation, or gratitude, right? So that's another level. And the third level is, the last level is essentially out of love. Right? So on a very, very crude level, these are the 4 or 5 different levels that I spoke of. One is out of fear. The second is out of some,
Desire.
desire, some desire. Then out of sense of responsibility and out of love. Which one do you think is best?
Certainly the last one, love.
Correct. So I would say, if you just take this category, 90% of the other guys are out. Right? You may be confused with 10% or 5% odd people. Then, from this category, think of, okay, someone is claiming Shiva is God, someone is claiming Krishna is God, someone is claiming something else, someone else is God, somebody is claiming there is no God. So somebody who's claiming there is no God, out of question to have any love. Right? Whom will you love? Nothing. Cannot love nothing, right? So that's out of question. When you come to the love category, you see worshippers of Lord Shiva or Lord Durga or any others. Mostly people, I'm just trying to give my general observation. I could be, there could be some other observations as well. The general observations are, even the songs they sing in their bhajans, etc. You know, Sukha karta, dukh harta. The idea is, okay, you take my miseries away, you provide me with wealth, right? Sukha aave, dhan paave, and all of that, right? You can understand that's not on the platform of love, isn't it? Preeti?
Yeah, I'm just contemplating. I'm thinking.
Yeah. So then when you actually look at devotees of Lord Krishna, who are the highest devotees of Lord Krishna? From your understanding, Preeti? The best devotees of Krishna.
Gopis or Radha.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Srimati Radharani, the highest devotee. It's actually Krishna manifested into, in one sense.
Yeah.
Yes. But Srimati Radharani, the highest devotee, and the gopis, they are the highest devotees of Lord Krishna. So, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Krishna himself, he mentioned Gopi Bhartarur Das Das Kamalayo Das 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 Anadas. Right? Following in the footsteps of the gopis of Vrindavan, right? Trying to be their servants of the servants of the servants of the servants of the servants. Right? When we talk about spiritual world, which is completely opposite of the spiritual world, here everyone wants to become number one. In the spiritual world, everyone wants to become the servant of the servant of the servant. Do you think this is close, or do you think this is connected to love, or do you think it's still material?
The last one, when you're talking, referring to gopis,
Yes.
yeah, I think it's love.
So the simple logical way of kind of getting to whom we should surrender, where to surrender, a simple thing would be that, okay, who are the followers of gopis? Who are people who are trying to follow in the footsteps of the gopis? And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Krishna himself, he mentioned how the attitude or mood should be to be the servant of the servant of the servant of gopis. Right? So, who are those people who are trying to be servants? Figure that out. See, and even while choosing a spiritual master, see their own behavior. Are they doing the things for their own sense gratification, for their name, fame, glory, or are they trying to serve Krishna in the best possible way, following in the footsteps of the gopis? And that should lead you to an answer: yes, this is a place where I should surrender. That could be ISKCON, that could be outside ISKCON, that could be anywhere, right? Because pure devotees are not just in ISKCON; pure devotees are everywhere. I'm not saying every organization, but I'm saying pure devotees can be found outside ISKCON also. But yeah, if you judge the organization basis, are they really following the path of love of God, or is it just on the level of fear? Is it just on the level of some sense of duty, or is it just on the level of some trade with the Lord? Does that help?
Yeah, yeah. I think I need some more thinking around it.
Yes. Food for
Thanks.
thought.
At the end, we are all looking for love and loving exchanges. That is what characterizes each living entity. And the earlier point of whether God is person, He's impersonal, without a form. The Vedic scriptures Bhagavatam very clearly says, Vadanti tat tattvavidas tattvam yajnanam advayam brahma iti paramatma iti bhagavan iti shabdyate. The absolute truth is found in all three features. He is impersonal also. He is there as Paramatma within the heart also. And he is Bhagavan also. He is a person also. All three are there. Topmost understanding is him of being as a person. So just like, and that is also the correct thing, because how can we deny something to God which we have? If I have a form, if I have a personality, how can I say the supreme absolute truth is without a form, without a personality? Then that lacking in something that I have. It is not possible. So he is, yes, formless. At the same time, he's beyond that also. He has a personal form, a personal loving exchange with his devotees. It is all on a pure platform of service. Right? Pure, it's more in the material world, the opposite of exploiting others. I want to enjoy my senses, and therefore I am in love with someone, or something like that. It's like I scratch your back, you scratch my back. At the end, I want to be satisfied. The pure love is on a different platform. It's out of selfless service.
And that's the reason actually why Krishna comes himself. Because to put an end to all such speculations, whether he's with form, without form, etc. So Krishna appears himself to show, oh, here I am, right? And unless he informs about himself, we cannot know, right? Because our brains are limited.
Have you, and I'm very curious to know now that you say that, and I know we've talked about this earlier. Anybody, and maybe, Sri Prabhupada ji, ever shared, or have you heard any experience of anyone actually seeing Krishna in his form?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that is there. And Prabhupada would say once there was a program in London, I believe, and he said that, could you not see that Narad Muni was here? So the pure devotees, like in the Brahma Samhita, it says, Premanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochanena Santa Sadaiva Hrideshu Vilokayanti. So it says the pure devotee, his eyes are anointed with love, and he therefore is able to see Krishna at every moment, not at every moment, because his eyes are anointed with love. So Santa Sadaiva, Sadaiva means always. He's always able to perceive the form of the Lord. He's always able to see the Lord. And why, even in our material experience, that becomes possible sometimes. We have an affection for someone. Knowingly, unknowingly, you might have, in your mind, somewhere, even while you're doing your work, the consciousness of that person. I mean, you're still thinking about that person. On a mundane platform, it is possible. On a spiritual platform, we cannot even imagine how much more intense the gopis' feeling of, love for the Supreme Lord is. And that can become possible for everyone who is practicing Krishna consciousness, like you were saying in the line of, the gopis who are worshipping the Supreme Lord. our whole parampara is coming from there. So a devotee can actually see the Lord at every moment, but he needs to have developed that eyes of love. So even otherwise, even if Krishna comes right in front of us right now, we will not be able to appreciate. Like Duryodhan was not able to appreciate Krishna is present right in front of him. He couldn't understand that he is the Supreme Lord. 5,000 years also, when Krishna appeared, not everyone could understand that he is Supreme Lord, but only the devotees could actually understand that. So, so one needs to develop the eyes to see God. That is the most important thing. Unless we purify ourselves, we will not be able to see the Supreme Pure.
One last point, sorry, just to add to it. So just reading, one of the quotes by Srila Prabhupada. So Srila Prabhupada was describing that how Srila Prabhupada himself reads his own books, and that he learns a lot when he reads his own purports and books. So, and he's describing that actually, it's a room conversation, and he's just telling one of his disciples that, oh, I also learn from my own books. You know why? Because it's not me who's writing. Krishna comes and dictates, and I write, and then later on I read myself. So I also get to learn a lot of things.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think I've got some clarity. Thanks a lot.
Prabhuji, there is a very nice English word, Almighty. When we talk about God as Almighty, it makes a lot of sense, because once you describe somebody as Almighty, that Almighty has all kinds of powers. So he can be in the human form, he can be in the animal form, he can be in no form, whatever way you look at it. He can be there in that form. And that is what the definition of Almighty is. People tend to forget that Almighty can have all these powers. And we try to compartmentalize and say, this is better, that is better, whatever. Ultimately, Almighty has all the powers, so can be in any form or no form.
Right. So the Almighty Himself, then goes on to describe what kind of worship you should do. So I think it comes in the 9th chapter, of course, plus the 12th chapter. And even when Krishna showed the Virat, etc. So while what you say is right, Krishna is everywhere, and he can wear. So a person, he can wear any mask he want and perform on the stage, but then he has his original face as well. So Krishna describes how his form, and that's what I'm saying. It's not my imagination or, oh, I like Krishna, therefore it's like that. No, Krishna is describing himself, and the scriptures are talking about it. That Krishna has his eternal transcendental form, which is just like a young boy, 16-year-old. His color is like the dark blue clouds, and he wears a peacock feather, and he plays on his flute. This is the original eternal form of the Lord. And yes, he can manifest in any form, anyhow, yes, but at the same time he is also indicating in Bhagavad Gita itself that worship of his personal form is much superior than worship of other forms, right? So yes, we may have our opinion, but the Lord's opinion of course, uh, you know uh, that has more value than our own independent opinions.
Prabhuji, I have a question here.
Yes.
Do we need a guru to visualize or to inherit the form of God, or a commoner can do it? A common devotee who is loving God can see that form.
So
Does he like this?
okay. Okay, so yeah, I think your question is to visualize. So yeah, so Krishna consciousness is not an artificial imposition on the mind that, oh, now let me start and visualize and imagine something. No, the process is you chant and hear the names of God, and automatically, things will start manifest as you advance more and more in your chanting, and in practicing Krishna consciousness. It will all come to you. The Nam, Roop, Guna, Leela, right? These will manifest. The name, the holy name will manifest as the personality of Krishna. Nam, Roop his form will appear, guna, his qualities will be more and more revealed, and the pastimes will also reveal. Right? So it's a revelation versus artificially trying to visualize. And anyone can do, because like I said, Krishna consciousness is there naturally in everyone's heart, because being part and parcel of the Lord, our very nature is to know, to love God and to serve Him. It's just that we have to kind of remove the dust accumulated from unlimited lifetimes now, through the process of chanting Hare Krishna, and there our naturally we'll be Krishna conscious, because that's our constitutional position, and then the behavior is natural Vaishnava behavior, right? We won't act whimsically. So yeah, what was the second part of the question? I forgot.
Guru.
Yeah.
Do we require Guru to make us understand that form?
Yes. So Guru, it's like, if you have access to Krishna right now, will that help? If you could talk to Krishna personally face to face, and he will guide you, oh, do this, and thereby you will come to me. Will that help?
I don't think so, yeah.
You don't think so? Being with Krishna will help you?
No, what is the meaning of that existence? I will not able to understand, I think.
Are you understanding what I'm saying? So, right now you're in the material world, you're doing certain things. Okay. Like Arjuna had the facility to hear directly from Krishna, on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. He heard directly from Krishna that what his duty is, or how he should act, what he should avoid, right? And Krishna personally corrected his understanding in so many places, right? Like we are reading. Will that help you if Krishna is there to personally guide you?
Yes.
Correct?
Yeah.
So, the Guru, being the representative of Krishna, who's physically present now, right? Being the representative of Krishna is there for you to access, so that you can receive direct instructions, very specific instructions as to what is stopping you from taking that next step towards Krishna. Guru knows your context. He understands where you're coming from. He can see through. He's seen Krishna. He's seen you, right? Where you are, what is stopping you, what are the impurities in the heart. He knows, and he knows Krishna also. He's seen him. He understands what will it take for you to get to Krishna. So then he accordingly, very specifically, as per your situation and context, guides you to do X, Y, Z, right? Therefore, having a guru, a spiritual master is extremely important. That's one of the first items, recommended in so many scriptures, in Nectar of Devotion, also in Bhagavad Gita, also it comes, and the purports, and even Hari Bhakti Vilas, right? There are different angas, or limbs of devotional service, or even Krishna describing what is knowledge, right? So he describes knowledge is also surrendering to the spiritual master. One of the definitions there, he gives many characteristics. So one of the characteristics is also to surrender to a spiritual master and learn from him. It is very simple. Somebody who's been there, done that, right? Like if you want to get into a career, you will talk to somebody who's already achieved something what you want to achieve, and then take guidance. See how did he achieve step by step. Just like that.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Okay, any other questions? Maybe breakout rooms, we can have next time. So
Yeah,
12:05.
Okay.
Any other questions anyone has?
I think there was some, sorry, just to bring that up, I was hearing from Harshita, there was some science related question from one of the reading groups. If anyone has remember that, then you can probably ask that question. Some scientist related question. I just heard, I don't remember it clearly. Anyone from the reading groups?
What we read was like scientists start everything in the middle, and like they take the
ingredients,
ingredients from the what is existing, what is created by God, and then they do something else. And again, we talked about the Darwin's theory, like man is evolution of monkeys and all, amoeba and everything like that. And if that, then the question was, why didn't monkey extinct? Like, why does monkey still exist, and why doesn't monkey give birth to a man? So like this we discussed. Yeah.
There was no question. I mean, these were discussions. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Should we end with 2 minutes Kirtan?
Yes, bro.
Just do 2 minutes Kirtan. If someone is getting late, we can drop. We just do for 2 minutes. This is practical application. Chanting the names of the Lord. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna,
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.